morning to you, our viewers, and you're most welcome to this edition of Focus on Parliament, where we look at activities and the unfolding events at Parliament. My name is Chemonges Timothy, and I wish to welcome you for today's Focus on Parliament, where we shall be looking on a number of things that Parliament considered, but specifically we shall be looking at three major items that we think should be able to give us guidance, but also we want to dig deeper into the same. So the first that we shall be looking at is Parliament this week launched the international campaign, which is dubbed as the 16 Days of Activism, that is focusing in ending gender-based violence. And specifically, the government has the Parliament has passed a number of laws in the past, including the Prohibition of Female Genital Mutilation Act of 2010, the Domestic Violence Act of 2010, and the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act, among many other laws that have been put in place to address the vice of gender-based violence. A lot has been achieved, and there's still a long way to go. The other area that we shall be looking at is the new approach by Parliament of asking the executive to present to Parliament action reports on all the resolutions and the determinations Parliament has passed, and want to see if this is an approach that will yield results, or it's just one of these measures that Parliament adopts. Also, we shall be looking at the loan that Parliament passed this week. This loan was around $331, which was for the electricity that is going towards improving the electricity distribution in the country. And lastly, if time will allow us, we shall also be looking at the aspect of which Ugandans qualify for state burials, following concerns of recently where Dr. Paul Kawanga Semogere, a distinguished Ugandan, passed on, and there seemed to be confusion on who exactly should benefit from this privilege. And I want to request to you our viewers that for more of these conversations, please subscribe. Please reach out to retweet in our social media so that this conversation can go on and on. Joining me today for this discussion is a panel of very distinguished guests who have experience in the areas of Parliament, and I want to welcome them and allow them to introduce themselves, starting with you, Honorable.
Good morning, viewers. I am Kabahenda Flavia Rwabuhoro. I represent the people of Kyegegwa district, and I chair the Committee on Gender, Labour and Social Development, and I am the chairperson of the Uganda Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection.
Honorable, you're most welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning, dear viewers. My name is Moses Mulondo. I'm a journalist working with Vision Group, and I have also been the president of Uganda Parliamentary Press Association until a few weeks ago when we had the elections and a new leadership was put in place.
For which you handed peacefully.
Yes, of course,
Okay.
I handed over power
Peaceful
after serving 2 terms.
Okay, thank you so much, Moses, and you're most welcome to today's discussion.
Thank you.
So we want to first look at the international campaign, which is dubbed the 16 Days of Activism. Uganda has done largely well as far as preventing and addressing the aspects to do with gender-based violence. However, there's still a long way for us to achieve, to be where we would comfortably say we are okay. So, Honorable, being a chair of the gender committee, where most of these aspects are addressed, we want to hear from you. So, where are we? What is these 16 days of activism, and where should we look forward to?
I want to first take this opportunity to congratulate all Ugandans and the world upon this season of the 16 Days of Activism against Gender-Based Violence that are running from today up to 10th December. And therefore, our color is orange. You can have it as a handkerchief, you can have it as a scarf, you can have it as a dress, as a bag, as a shoe, anything. Just take the advantage of this season to put on something orange, maybe a tie or something like that. So I congratulate you upon this season. And this season actually starts from the USA in New York, where some people discovered that there were violences going on unnoticed, and yet they were causing very grave harm, not only to the households and the individuals to whom they happened, but they started now affecting the social and economic settings in that place. And so a global team had to sit and find a way that we get a season where we can do a number of activities to get the whole world to the attention that there is this happening. And so for us as Uganda, we have not been commemorating, because there is nothing to celebrate on gender-based violence. We can only commemorate. And so in our commemorations, Uganda has not been coming out so well to articulate what government is planning as activities to implore that every player plays into this season to especially bring awareness. And so I'm glad that when we had just come to Parliament and I had just become the chairperson of the Committee on Gender, a report from Uganda Police came out of the crime rate 2021, and it spelled that 17,632 cases of gender-based violence had been reported that year. How many then were not reported? You can never know. So we immediately took interest, and we started finding out, and they were citing that the Northeast and the East were actually carrying the biggest prevalence. So we had to go to Jinja, to Tororo, to Karamoja region to find out what the push factors were and the drivers. And we came out with a very, very big comprehensive report that carried a number of recommendations, one of which was that government during this season of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence should come up with a statement which will guide the players, all of us, the players up to the household, on how we should be part of this campaign. When people hear about activism, they think it is this rough, defiant kind of approaches. But activism is to be vigilant, is to participate in the advocacy, is to support vehemently. You don't support from the dark, you don't support by hiding out, no. You support, you come out and speak against the vice of gender-based violence. And so that is why we are saying, let's unite. All of us should unite to end gender-based violence wherever it happens. And I know that violence comes from within. You are first violent in your mind, and then you exert this violence to whoever you think could have caused it to you. And so we have very many people who actually are already suffering with violence in their hearts, but they can't even physically slap anyone. And so we have now started actually registering a number of mental cases. We have started registering a number of suicides. In 1 month of October alone, we registered 9 young people hanging themselves, moreover school children hanging themselves. And that is violence. You know, it starts with a trauma, a self-pity, a stress that is caused by someone around you. The girl who wrote a letter opened our eyes. She said, I have been suffering this. The uncle who came and spent a holiday here abused me throughout. And there is no way I could even express it. And he kept telling me, you can't tell it to anyone. It can only end up with me and you. And so the girl got abused until the uncle went. And then she started deteriorating in class. And then the parents brought a teacher to coach her. Kumbe, even the teacher had come to abuse. So, you know, this kind of thing, and she couldn't tell it to anyone. And so she ended up hanging herself. And it was a pity. And so violence happens, it is real. And of course, naive people, when you hear us talking about gender-based violence, will quickly think we are talking about women. I want to tell you, today as we talk, things have shifted. that men are now suffering violence that you cannot even imagine in your hearts, that it comes from their close friends, spouses, intimates, children, including daughters and sons. And so the men, because stereotyping does not allow them to make alarms, they keep quiet so many times. They are battered, they are violated upon, they are abused, they go home to their homes in the morning because they must find peace. And so when we talk about gender-based violence, I want us to be really balanced, that very many people are suffering out there. I was just giving an example a while ago, that this is an old, 60% of the utilizable land in Uganda belongs to older persons. That's for a fact. And this son of this older person, when he grows up and gets some little money, he's working with Bank of Uganda, he's working with MTN, those kind of things, he has his money, he assumes that because I'm his son, I think I can construct now a mansion here using his land without his authority. Just assuming that because I'm his son, so I can use the land because I am the one who has money in the home, and so I can do this and that. And then his siblings get violated because this person has assumed, like he's the only son here. And also the older person gets abused because you had to have the courtesy to discuss with him what you're going to do, so that possibly he could allocate you, okay, you put it there, so that your other siblings can also find space here. Or I am not giving away my land. He has even that authority to say, no, go and find your land and do your things. And so very many times what we think we take for granted are violence against our people. And of course, I want to implore every Ugandan, let's unite to end violence right from the household and everywhere. Even language just can violate. Because for me to have big breasts, why should it be an abuse on me? Because I was created like that. You should respect me the way I am. For me to have thin legs should not even be an abuse to me. Because when a man has thin legs, who abuses him? It is the woman who is abused for having thin legs, for having very big breasts, for having a big tummy. And so all that composes violence. And so we need to really sensitize and create awareness on the very many instances where we end up violating our friends' rights right from the home and even out of the home. And so I think I will add there, because a number of push factors are there, and one of the very common ones is parenting. If we are going to be parents, let us parent all the children, girls and boys. On the floor of Parliament, I was citing that my committee visited the remand homes recently. And the 3 remand homes, because I split the committee into 2, the vice chairperson took to the east, I took to the west. But the group which I led, we visited 3 remand homes and about 3 rehabilitation centers for PWDs. But the 3 remand homes, we started at Kampiringisa, we found 194 remandees. Only 4 were girls. The rest were boys. We went to Fort Portal, we found 75 remandees, only 1 girl. In Masindi, 55 remandees, no girl. What does that spell? That for us, we are busy preparing our girls for good marriage, for being upright, but preparing them for rogues, thieves, defilers, who are in remand homes. Those are the ones we are preparing our girls for. And so if we are not careful, even if we talked about emancipation of women, if we are not going to prepare the men, the emancipation of women is going to be in vain. So we are better off preparing the boys as well, because we should stop thinking that because the boy does not get pregnant, therefore he does not get spoiled. But the boys get spoiled in many ways. I want to tell you, in Kampiringisa, we found a 15-year-old boy having raped an old woman and killed her. 15 years. Why won't he kill his wife? So these are the people we are talking about. And so the very biggest issue comes from the household. This is the basis of our virtues, of our values, of our behavior and conduct, both in private and in public. So the household, for me, this year should be the center for us to target with education, awareness, a lot of information, popularizing the laws, SDG 5, gender equality, SDG 16 for justice, peace, and strong institutions. The first institution is the house.
The house. Thank you, Honorable. I think you give it a very fair analysis on where we are and some of the measures that we really need to take to ensure that some of this gender-based violence comes to an end. Moses, you are a distinguished journalist and quite an experienced one, and you must have covered these areas of gender-based violence among many others. We want to benefit from your rich experience. What measures can be done to address this? Because clearly we have laws, there are measures which have been put in place, but there are still challenges, though a lot has been achieved. What in your view can give us a heads up to ensure that this gender-based violence comes to an end?
Thank you very much. First of all, I will at some point, of course, broaden this discussion on violence because it has so many facets and it happens in different spheres. But going back to the question you've just put, of course, she told you that the incidents were more rampant. If you look at the areas that she pointed out where gender-based violence is more rampant, there is a correlation between the rate of poverty, the level of education, and the prevalence of gender-based violence. It is more rampant, even in these urban areas. Even here in Kampala, you will see it more rampant in families that are in ghetto places, in poor families where people are extremely stressed, people are very extremely poor, people are less educated. So if you are to think of coming up with remedies or solutions to the problem, certainly there are long-term, medium-term, and short-term interventions that we need to undertake. Of course, this campaign that has been launched is a very timely intervention because it helps us to even appreciate the magnitude of the problem. The statistics come out. Different stakeholders who are supposed to undertake action are sensitized. So I would like to commend the stakeholders behind this campaign. It's a very good initiative. It's part of the solutions, of course, that we need. Creating awareness that we have this very big problem that we need to address. But now back to the broadening of this subject. I think violence is part of our society. And even when you extend in the political sphere, I covered the last gen elections. What others actually call state-inspired violence. It was unprecedented. I don't think it has even ever happened in any part of the world that on a campaign trail. Because I had been deployed to cover Robert Kyagulanyi. I was given a car, I was given a driver and a photographer. But I had to run away after 2 weeks because every day, tear gas, bullets, and clashes, fights between security officers and Kyagulanyi's team. Many people actually, there were those explosives which were not really bombs, but whenever they were thrown, they shattered people's legs. You know what happened when Kyagulanyi was arrested? We've just actually had the commemoration of what happened in November 2020. That so many Ugandans were shot dead on the streets of Kampala. Thousands of Ugandans were arrested, and up to now they have not yet been released. Of course, violence emanates from conflicts, and conflicts can be political, can be in the family, can be social, can take different aspects. So it is a broader subject. When you look at the economic condition, the state of the economy, it's we are having economic challenges as a country. Commodity prices are skyrocketing. So many families cannot afford, by the way. The cost of living is so high, especially the poor families. And this, I think, has exacerbated these conflicts that are culminating into violence of men battling their wives after they have had disagreements. Maybe man is not the husband is not providing enough money to look after the children, and the wife maybe has another woman, and that causes a quarrel which culminates into physical attack. So, but generally the problem rotates around. When it comes to gender-based violence, it three major aspects: the level of education, the economic condition, poverty rate. But the other third aspect which we need to talk about, which Honorable Kabahenda hinted about, is the issue of which you would call civilization, or the issue of values. As a country, as a society, this is a campaign I have seen in the past, many stakeholders saying, as a country, we need to have certain principles and values that we can inculcate in our citizens. But I don't think we've yet come to that stage where, as a country, we agree on certain principles and values which can actually define us as a society, and we make certain behaviors, like someone beating a husband beating a wife, a child beating a parent, make them look abominations. As a society, that is an area where we've not yet built consensus. Certainly, it has to be spearheaded by our policymakers, by our national leaders, but this is a conversation that we've not yet had as a country, which I think is very important. Even religious leaders and cultural leaders are very important in calibrating that kind of agenda, where we would agree on certain principles and values that should define us, and declare certain behaviors abominations and unacceptable. Maybe to even require some legislation to that effect.
Moses, we have legislation, and I know there are concerns as far as, say, budgetary allocation in implementing them, probably attitude.
The legislations are not enough, by the way. You remember, the marriage and divorce bill was one of those legislations that sought to address these challenges that are happening in families. And of course, there was a lot of resistance from a number of stakeholders, including the president. And of course, some of the people who resisted that law had some genuine concerns, because I had some of them say, if you allow that law to pass in that form, it is going to make marriage a risky venture, and eventually we shall become like the Western societies, where increasingly very few adults commit into marriage, and you have a permissive society with people with so many single parents, people who produce children but not in the context of marriage. So some people had some genuine concerns to resist the law, but even those who were pushing for it had some genuine reasons why they were pushing for it, and they thought maybe this would be one of those solutions, because some of the conflicts have been actually emanating from sharing resources, and of course, in as much as there are many incidents of men battling women, but there are also many incidents of women killing their husbands in different ways, including poisoning them so that they can take their property and things of that nature. But generally speaking, violence which emanates from conflicts is a very broad subject, which has so many aspects. The conflicts in our society are in so many spheres, and even in our institutions, public institutions, I keep seeing conflicts, people fighting each other, and which actually stifles progress. So the conflicts are so many and in different aspects, and as a country, we certainly need this kind of campaign and so many other interventions, short term, medium term, and long term, to address them.
Thank you, Moses. Honorable Moses, among many other factors that contribute toward gender-based violence, he mentions the societal structure, but also the economic aspect of it. But also we've seen that even in town, where we would imagine that there's a specific section of group, probably they are more advanced in knowledge and understanding, they have now shifted online. And even women, listening to most of them, because of the attacks, because of the threats, and this probably may be subjective, even at the time when now the Prime Minister, Nabanja, Right Honorable Nabanja, was taking over the seat, there seemed to be a lot of bullets thrown on her. If you choose to look at it from the overview, it may be okay, but looking at it from the gender perspective, it could be probably because she's a woman. What sort of understanding is in this?
Actually, what I should actually let you know is that while we think that it is the poor people who are fighting, the man sang his song, Agaba Somieko, Gegawo Mogose. Even those who are rich are suffering violence. But because of that aspect of being rich, how will they see me? I don't think I should even spare the members of parliament. They could be experiencing violence, but because of that status, you cannot come out.
Honorable Flavia, the only difference is, like, for those people who are land corporates, when they choose to separate, they will not go physical and fight each other. They can just separate.
No, but we have just recently seen a lawyer who has killed a doctor. Did she separate? She killed. It is very recent, and we have seen very many. That it is a temperament issue, that whoever gets violated can decide to act in a way that no one would expect. You think that if they are land, this was a whole lawyer who knew the law. And she knew she was going to kill, and she stays to face the law, which she read. And there you are. So I want to tell you that violence treats people differently. Even when you think it doesn't know any wealth, it doesn't know that you went to school, it doesn't know who you are, the status, there will be violence. And so we need to mitigate this violence. And secondly, among the values that we need to really instill into the young people is patience. It is impatience that holds 80% of the young women who are going to the Middle East. Not that there are no jobs per se, because I have even tasked government, the Ministry of Gender, which harbors the Labor and Employment Services Department. Have you done a business case to understand whether it is cost effective for us to send our labor out and not utilize it here? Have you really established that in this country there are no jobs? Or you are bandwagoning because you are hearing young people saying there are no jobs, there are no jobs. Now you, the technical people, are also saying there are no jobs.
I've accepted the narrative.
Have you traversed this country to see whether there are actually no jobs? Secondly, is it cost effective for us to have a brain drain of our young people going out, coming up with no value? Because even those who come out of Middle East successfully, that, like I hear people say, what do they bring? What value addition do they put to this country? If they come with a skill, can we harness the skills they come with? If they come with money, where is it invested? That we can say a success story is here. So at the end of the day, I have discovered there's a lot of impatience. And there is a research that EPRC has recently conducted that 62.7% of young people between 20 and 30 years have intentions to migrate. They already have intentions to migrate. She's sitting her senior 4, but her mind is saying, immediately my results come, I should go. There are no jobs. But senior 4 I thought you would continue with education so that you get the rightful job. So even the one who dropped out of P4 is telling you there are no jobs. Where are the jobs for P4?
Timothy, can I give information to
So now,
on that?
maybe if you can allow me to conclude on the issue, is values. As families, let us teach our people how to be patient. Because in the past, we used to get famines and droughts, and our grandparents used to talk about them. There was this famine where you would just sleep. You would even boil stones to just make a picture to the children that you seem to be cooking something. But the children would be patient. But today, a child of 4 years or 5, if there is no food at home, will run to the neighbor, will go to the kasasiro, will go everywhere because of impatience. We have not instilled patience so that people can wait for time. People can be patient a bit and be able to reap bigger. Because when we instill patience into these young people, we create resilience, that you can be tough. And that is why the saying is, when the going gets tough, it is the tough who get going. But have we made our young people tough for the going? Because the going is really tough. And so very many have resorted to doing atrocities, going through unsafe pathways, and just saying, "Sifira one, watch it in feed away." And indeed, they have died, and bodies have been brought. I think you have been seeing, even my honorable colleague Nantaba, a relative has died, and they have to bring back the body. And people continue to go, people continue to die, and they vow, "I would rather die there and not here." And so we need to really, for me, my target is still the household. If we have to create resilience, if we have to instill patience, and build a social protection strategy right from the household, we shall have people who really, contain contain the situations as they can. And of course, family meetings and cultural meetings. Those are no longer there. Even at family, I have, yesterday, I was listening to a family that was meeting on his phone. It's a family meeting, but they are meeting on phone.
Virtually.
They cannot even see eye to eye. Everything now has become virtual, and the more virtual we become, the more detached we are. The more the schools demand that this child at 3 years should come to school at 6, go back home at 8, no weekend, no holiday, they get detached from the family. So they stand alone, and they cannot bear the pressure when they are alone. Everything can betray you, but there will always be family. Even when we lose elections, we as politicians, if you know you mistreated your family, you'll go back to that family. And the family will treat you the same way you treated them when you were up here. So we need to really know that the family is the bottom line. It is the first line of instance for all of us to bear the brunt of violence.
Thank you, Honorable. Moses, you had something.
The information I wanted to give, Honorable was overemphasizing the issue of patience when she was talking about the Ugandans who are migrating to especially Middle East countries. I want to disagree with her because I think the major driving force, push factor behind that is the high rate of unemployment in the country. There are statistics which are available because she was wondering whether government has ascertained whether there are no jobs in the country. The jobs are not there, and the facts are there, the statistics are there. Out of every 40,000 Ugandans that are churned out from universities and tertiary institutions of learning, less than 10% of them are able to be absorbed in our labor market. So the rate of unemployment is so high, which is actually a failure on the side of government, that government has not done enough, because it is the cardinal responsibility of government to create jobs, but these jobs have not been created. And because of that high rate of unemployment, so many of them choose to desperately go to these Middle East countries where some are turned into slaves. But also, talking about patience, we have leaders, and leaders are supposed to be exemplary. leaders in different spheres, especially in the politics, in the religious sphere, and other spheres, including cultural leaders. But the other big crisis that we have as a country is that the bulk of our leaders in these spheres are not exemplary. Themselves are not patient, they are corrupt. We have a corrupt, a breed of leaders that are so corrupt that are amassing wealth through swindling state resources. And so when these young people grow up looking at such leaders and how quick they are getting rich through swindling state resources, they, of course, certainly you cannot teach them to be patient and to behave the right way. And lastly, or related to that, this country has a big number of children who grow up without parents. A big number of
without
orphans.
being parented.
Well, without being
parents
parented. Some of them, even their parents separated and abandoned them. In Kenya, they allocate not less than 400 billions, their national budget, to look after those children, especially the orphans, those vulnerable children who are helpless. But in our, and Honorable Kabahenda, this is within your jurisdiction, within your committee, as a country, we do not have a single budget item in our national budget budgeting for those children, and yet this is the future of our country, and that is why we have a big number of them on the streets in different urban areas, abandoned, helpless, and many of them actually eventually turn into criminals. So I think as a country, even as we embark on the budgeting process for the next financial year, we certainly need to push government to, if we can have a budget for a presidential donations budget of over 200 billion just for donating, why can't we have at least in the beginning a small budget for specifically helping those children who are helpless? Some of them, their parents died. Others, their parents are extremely poor because the poverty rates in this country are so high. Some of those children you see on the streets from Kalamoja, the parents are there, but they are extremely poor. They can't look after them. But these are children of the state, of the country. So it is the responsibility of government to put some funds in the national, like the Kenyan government does and many other countries do, that we should budget and put in place facilities and mechanisms for looking after these children. Some of them can turn out to be our doctors tomorrow and even national leaders.
Even, Honorable, even as Prof, I'm sure you have something to respond to that.
Sure.
I know that the Committee on Gender, and specifically you as chair, you're very passionate on aspects to do with labor externalization. Also, I know that much of the work that you are currently working on is around the same.
Yeah, we have a report. We are coming up with a report.
The Speaker directed this week that the committee looks into the owners of these companies, and I don't know if it's already.
We already have a report, and we are first presenting the Employment Amendments Bill, and then we bring the report on labor externalization.
Oh, okay.
But similar reports have been done in that parliament before, even in the previous parliament. But I think when you examine the nature of these companies that are involved, so many powerful people in government are part of that cartel, and I think that is why not much can be done, because similar reports have been done in the past in that parliament, have been there.
So I think one thing is true, that the 11th parliament is not going to work like the other parliaments. That's why we are now causing action-based sector reports, that we don't simply get on the microphone and discuss in vain. We are causing all the sectors that whatever recommendations we pass as parliament, after 6 months, the sector concerned must come with a report. And that is why we have even got the statement on GBV. We didn't have it before. It comes from my report with the committee. And the whole of yesterday, we were in the House when sectors were reporting on the actions they are taking, those they have not yet taken, those that are awaiting budgets, but they are committed. That's one way of holding them accountable. And so these are not going to be like any other reports. This time, we are going to put people to task, to account. Whatever recommendation we shall give, the Ministry of Gender will be obligated to come up with an action agenda or an action strategy on how they are going to work on each of the recommendations we give. And so for me, that gives hope, not only to Parliament, but also to the rights holders. We are duty bearers, they are rights holders. They will be seeing the way we proceed. And yesterday was one example that I'm not now telling stories, because we have shifted from simply debating and keeping the reports, debating and keeping the reports. Now we cause action on the reports. And so for me, that is going to take us to a different direction. But one thing I want to tell you, we can discuss the curriculum. If we have a curriculum that is teaching people only how to speak and write English, we are away from the truth. I think as government, we need to redirect what we call education. Because if up to now we are talking about graduates being accommodated, where? I think the curriculum needs to change to the effect that every graduate goes with a job. Recently, I was representing the minister, the state minister for youth, at a graduation at a skilling center in Jinja. And I told to the graduates of degrees, I said, you people, these people are going to employ you. Because for them, they are going not only with a paper, but with a job. Because after they were passed out, each of the 172 that were graduated was given their startup kit. If you were into tailoring, get your tailoring machine. If you were into hairdressing, get your hairdressing kit. So for them, they did not walk away with only certificates, they walked away with a job. So I told the graduates there, wait to be their storekeepers. If you know you have a degree in storekeeping, wait to be their accountants, because now these are going as investors. They are coming to the community to invest so that you can work for them. And that is the reason why, technically, we need a business case. What do we lose when our labor goes out? What do we gain when they go out? Already, the UBO statistics are telling us our labor productivity index is at 31, meaning we have a lot of labor, but labor that does not work. We give these people jobs. When they're asking for jobs, they are crying, they want to work. They reach there and TikToking and everything. So labor productivity, we should pick out these specific things and work on them. As government, I'm part of government, we can talk about the curriculum. Can we redirect our curriculum? One time when His Excellency was presiding over a graduation in Makerere, he said, now you people who have graduated in law, the best thing I can advise you to do, you could even choose to take a 6 months or 1 year course in catering. And my sister Namboze went on TV and bashed. How can I take my child for a 4-year course in law and then you tell her or him to go to catering? But I want to tell you, if Sheraton was looking for a legal officer, and this legal officer presents having performed very well in law, and then another one comes with law, and then a 6 months in catering, who would they take?
Certificate.
This one who? If we know that China has 1/3 of the labor in engineering and construction, if I come out as an engineer, and you know that Chinese don't speak your language, you have to speak theirs, why wouldn't you go for a course of 3 months in Chinese? That value addition, we must create demand for labor. And creating demand for labor involves curriculum, involves value addition. Don't think a degree is enough. Always look out. This parish chief who presents himself, we are asking for diplomas. You must present, you have your diploma, yes. You have your ICT, so meaning you'll be writing your own report. I have a license to ride a motorcycle or even drive a car. So that means when you are going to the field, we don't need to drive you. You will drive yourself, go pick your report, write your own report, present it. If I was on the table giving jobs, I wouldn't give this parish chief who has just come out and for him is sitting, he wants a job. but people add
What
additional
is the
so that they
addition?
cause demand for labor. Those are things we should start taking ourselves through. Otherwise, if we leave the status quo of 400 are out, they are not absorbed, I don't know who should absorb them because the absorption is not there. Let us now think about our curriculum, whether it is good enough to create demand for labor, whether it is good enough to take these people out, transit them into the service sector, and we shall be good to go. Me, I'm ready to even task my government to relook at the curriculum to the effect that we are not only pushing out 400,000 who are now waiting to be absorbed when the absorption long stopped, but we are better off encouraging them. One thing I have found in Kenya are the cottage industries, where government has found land and they have put containers and partitioned them in different kiosks for just young people. I even took pictures. 3-storied, only young people. This one is in electricals, this one is in boutique, this one is in arts and crafts, this one, everyone, but all of them, the whole setting was young people. And we can do that as Uganda. We can do industrial cottages and place these young people who have skills to be somewhere where they can work from so that their workplaces are decent. And I want to tell you, Uganda still cherishes and harnesses our traditions. Traditionally, our children need to be home. Traditionally, our older persons need to be home. And when government gives money to senior citizens, SAGE, little as it is, if they told you the story of how much it trickles down to the orphans and vulnerable children they live with, you would say we can talk about increasing the money from 25 to around 50,000, because at the end of the day, it is not necessarily the older persons who benefit, but these orphans and vulnerable children, because statistics are telling us that more than 3 million orphans and vulnerable children are living with older persons. So when we support older persons, when we support the PWDs with a special grant, not even a loan, but a grant, there is now a new thing, the special grant for older persons, those who don't fall into the bracket of SAGE by age, 60 years to around 75, are going to have a special grant. Group, get your enterprise, 5 million. You can either revolve it or use it for your enterprise so that these young people who stay with you can benefit. We still believe in the family. We still believe traditionally that the child can only be molded by a family and not a home. We have seen boarding schools. Children have gone there to the age of 2 years, come out at university with 25 years, and no morals, nothing. So we are not yet ready to lose those morals in homes, constructing homes for older persons, homes for children. No, we can only support homes. Make them resilient. Make them be able to use the little that government gives in UPPA, in YLP, in NUSAF, in PRDP. All those are social protection funds that go to the families, and the families are expected to use them well. Unfortunately, it is the families who don't use it well. Why are the young people not paying YLP back? Is it because of what? Because there are no jobs that they are not paying back? Why are some of the women in UPPA not paying back?
How many young people benefited from YLP?
The problem that we have,
the number was very small,
is if it is on the guidelines, we can relook at the guidelines because they can be amended. For me, in my office, I have a list of all the groups of women who benefited from UPPA. The same groups are writing to the MP's office wanting support. So me, I just invite them. But your group got 12 million from government. Why didn't you pay back? What now is it? Then the problem is in the dynamics of the group, because you wouldn't now be asking for money. When there are groups which did not benefit at all, for you who got 12 million are the ones now coming back that the MP should support you, then there's something in the dynamics either of the leadership of the group, or you think that for everything that comes from government is free to take. Maybe. Because now we have come from Emyoga did circles, again PDM is again recircularizing people. But where did the circles of Emyoga go? Why do we recircularize when we already circularized them in Emyoga? So these are the things that I take in good faith that government should look at, so that we don't continue to do things into others. We need to rewire systems so that we synergize what we do. If every MP had that list to tell, you got money, what was the problem? You know, the treasurer ran away with it. Then we find a way. But we cannot continue with the same group, and yet there are others that we need to match.
Groups.
And the other thing that I can talk about was the marriage bill, which he had alluded to.
Maybe we could just we take a bit of a short break, and then we'll come and wind up this conversation. I also want to hear Moses' view as far as the new approach the 11th Parliament is taking. You seem to allude that there have been more reports over and over.
And
I'll give you my perspective.
He's right.
So after the break, I really want to hear from you. So is this one of those magic bullets, or it's just one of those actions? To you, our viewers, thank you so much for keeping with us. We take a short break, and we'll see you after the break. Thank you.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Thank you so much to your viewers and for keeping with us, and you're welcome to this second part of the discussion. We continue with where we had stopped, and Honorable was finalizing.
Yeah, I was just responding to the marriage bill, which of course he said that maybe the movers must have seen something to correct. It's just one thing. Whatever starts, ends. Like we do contracts. There's a Contracts Act. And the Contracts Act will show you how to enter a contract, how to respect the contract, and how to end the contract. So that if you have to separate as partners, if you have to separate in a contract, you separate in peace. And equally so, the marriage is a contract. And that is why people take vows. And when they take vows, we cannot bury our heads in the sand. That marriages don't end, much as they start. But the spirit is for them to end peacefully. That people don't have to end when they are dead, end when they have been abused, when they have been cheated.
They don't have body parts.
When they don't have much of the body parts. So we can procrastinate, but by all means, there is a way marriages end. And so we are better off preparing for the way they end, because the end justifies the means. The means through which they end, for us, becomes the very important part. Not that we wish that they would end, but we know that they do end. Even when in the faith-based organizations, they say till death, but there's a marriage where you can't say till death, where a woman gets a killer and kills a husband who they have 2-3 kids with. means that something has been happening into their family, and they decided to hang on because the church, until one killed another. And I don't know whether that is where the church praises itself, that is the death, that you should die so that the marriage can be off. But we would like to provide for the existing situations, that indeed the church has its own, we can continue to respect it, but I think there must be a provision where now the marriage is out of hands, and so instead of people dying and for us losing lives and for children remaining orphans, we would rather give them a more accessible way of handling grievances and having to do away with the marriage that does not work. Things reach a time and they don't work. And so we should accept that fact and be able to provide for it, and so we can save a number of lives. Otherwise, for me, my discussion on this still goes back to our family. It's the family.
Thank you, Honorable. Moses, you alluded to the fact that there have been reports after report after report, and there seem not to be tangible results coming out of that. A number of resolutions, a number of motions passed, but there seems not to be results being seen on the ground. And now the 11th Parliament has adopted an approach which is new, where the executive are tasked in different MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, to come to Parliament and report on the resolution. Yes. So, don't you think this is a move in the right direction?
Of course, it's a very good initiative, which is of course complementing what has already been existing, because under our laws, government is required to prepare a treasury memoranda in which is usually actually prepared by the Minister of Finance, in which they in detailed form explain the actions that were taken on the different resolutions and the decisions of Parliament. So already there was that kind of mechanism. So this additional one is also good. But of course, there is a saying in the Bible, to whom much is given, much is required. The public expects a lot from Parliament, especially the current Parliament. You know, the budget for Parliament about 6 years ago was about 200 billion. The current Parliament, the budget has reached about 800 billions. So, but even as we talk about the resolutions and the decisions made in the public domain, yeah, there are different perceptions about our Parliament, especially when it comes even on the quality of some of the decisions made. I can give you an example. The Computer Misuse Amendment Bill, which was recently passed by Parliament, I was one of the stakeholders that appeared before the committee that processed the bill. And I can confidently tell you, which was even said by the chairperson of the Media Council, Paul Lekot, which is a government entity. He said, we had the media dialogue last week, and he said it is unfortunate that whereas all the stakeholders that appeared before the committee, including the Ministry of ICT and Media Council, rejected that bill, the committee and Parliament went ahead and passed the bill. So you can see there is a problem there, a very serious problem, because Parliament is supposed to represent the people, the citizens. And if the citizens have been invited and they have appeared before a committee and they have presented their views, we appeared before the committee, Uganda Law Society, and so many stakeholders. All of them, by the way, they opposed that bill and said this bill will greatly curtail press freedom and the freedom of expression, especially on the digital platforms. But the committee went ahead and wrote a report which was completely detached from the views of the majority stakeholders that appeared before it. And the Parliament went ahead and passed. So when you are talking about resolutions of parliament upon which action is required, keep in mind that there are some of such decisions that were made that were not popular actually, that were not in the public interest. But generally speaking, certainly it's a very good intervention for the leadership of parliament to come up with that new mechanism of requiring the entities, I mean ministries, ministers, to appear before parliament and give accountability on the action that was taken. But of course, legally, parliamentary resolutions are not, they are advisory. You remember there was that case of Amama Mbabas, and there was a court ruling to that effect. So parliamentary resolutions we shouldn't forget that they are advisory to the executive. The executive is not legally mandated to implement each one of them. So there, I am sure there will be some decisions, like Parliament made a decision, by the way, for the cancellation of the Umeme contract. You remember, it was not the current Parliament. I think it was the 9th Parliament, either the 9th or the 10th Parliament. But the executive did not terminate the contract. There are some important resolutions that we have passed, like the one on the Vince coffee deal. Parliament passed a very good resolution, which was in the public interest, and which because I remember there was a lot of pressure, even when the trade committee was processing it. The executive really greatly supported that and was defending the deal, but Parliament chose to take the popular side of the public and went ahead and made a resolution calling for the termination of that contract. Of course, up to now, we have not yet had any communication from the executive that Pinetti's contract was terminated. So it would be very important for the relevant ministry to appear before Parliament and they give accountability. Yesterday I was following as the different ministers were giving the actions taken, of course, even from the reaction of the deputy speaker who was presiding over and many other stakeholders. Many of them, their reports left a lot to be desired, really. You could really see a lot of unseriousness for many of these ministers, that these reports were just a formality, but you could really see that there was no serious action that was taken on some of them. I remember the Prime Minister said that on this we shall have to consult the President, but a decision was taken by Parliament 5 months ago, and up to now you are saying the President has not yet been briefed and you don't know what his opinion on that recommendation is. So there is a very big challenge. The last aspect I want us to look at, especially in the current situation, is that which is, of course, because all this rotates around service delivery. Government is in a crisis. Government is in a very big crisis, to the extent that many of these ministries that we expect to take action, they don't even have money for operation, for fuel. I remember there was a minister recently who was on the floor, I think she was from the fisheries, who said we do not have even money to move around and see what is happening. So government currently is in a very big financial crisis, that even the budgeting process, the budgeting appropriation that Honorable Kabahenda and the group who are part of the Parliament Budget Committee, whatever they appropriated is not what is being followed, because government is in a very big financial crisis. Because look at it, the portion of the national budget that goes to interest and debt repayment in the last 8 years has been skyrocketing, going up, and it has now reached 18 trillion. So in the budget for the current financial year, so far I have been following and I've been writing reports on this. It's my area where I am very passionate about. The money released for the second quarter and the second quarter. In the first quarter, 3.9 trillion of the 10 trillion that government released was for interest and debt payment. In the second quarter, the money that was released, out of the money that was released for the second quarter, 4.1 trillion was for interest and debt repayment. So that brings us to a total of actually exactly 18 trillion that government, because 4.1 plus 3.9, 80 trillion in this first half of this current financial year has been spent on interest payment and debt payment. I have seen a report from URA. The money they have collected so far is also in that range, in the range of 80 trillion. So you can imagine the bulk of what URA is collecting is now going into interest payment and debt repayment. And that means, because our wage bill has reached 5 trillion, 5 trillion. So that means what government is left with is not even enough to pay salaries. Forget about operational costs, but even paying salaries. You saw the interns, medical interns recently laid down their tools, and they were saying they had not been paid for 2 months. You can imagine, medical interns. There is a video clip I saw from Uhuru Kenyatta when he was about to move out of the office of the president. He said, for us Kenyans, we are not like our neighboring countries. At least for us, for all our recurrent expenditures, we don't borrow. We are able to raise enough money to meet our recurrent expenditures. But our government right now is running to money lenders, like that loan from Standard Chartered Bank, where they are acting as middlemen to get money to pay salaries and operational costs, which are mainly recurrent expenditures. And that is a very big crisis. It means even these resolutions that are being made in Parliament, the recommendations being made, and the appropriations and different decisions that are made by Parliament where action has to be taken, most of these entities are incapacitated. 2 days ago, UNRWA was before the Finance Committee, and they were saying many of their projects have stalled. And when their projects stall, the contractors keep charging them interest. And they said the interest they have been charging them has now accumulated to over 800 billion. Because government does not have enough money to release it for the projects to go on. So you see, we have a very serious serious crisis that we have as a country. But of course, the solution which Parliament and the Executive are supposed to undertake are the radical measures, radical reforms, like cutting wasteful expenditures, which are so many. But that is a very broad discussion which I don't think we are able
to have it in the short time. So, Honorable, and Moses, thank you so much. And you raised quite a number of concerns and issues. Honorable Moses alludes to the fact that there's already an existing measure for the executive to account on the resolutions of Parliament. But also he says that as we stand, the resolutions are simply advisory. But listening to the Speaker, she insists and says these are resolutions of Parliament and they must be acted on.
Yeah, I want to tell you that we know about the Treasury Memorandum, but that's post-mortem. For us, we decided to go for a proactive intervention that checks regularly. Actually, there's a second thing we have even adopted as members of Parliament, the quarterly financial performance from Ministry of Finance. We want a quarterly performance. And actually, I think next week, we are likely to have the quarterly performance report from Ministry of Finance for the first quarter. So that we understand whether budgeting has become a ritual, that we appropriate and thump our chests and then no releases. So we want to follow up now so that we go to the gist. Who exactly now is the problem for the country? So that even the rights holders understand that the problem may not be necessarily coming from Parliament, but either from some ministry or from the powers that be. So for us, we want to isolate issues now so that we are not bundled, all of us, into a failure. We have given you the law, We have told you to come with a statutory instrument. We have even given you a timeline. Why is the statutory instrument not coming? So we are going to isolate you, the person who is not moving us. And that is why we have chosen to go for these proactive action-based sector reports, so that by the time the Treasury Memorandum comes, it is just winding us up. Our term of parliament, I think, runs faster than the calendar year. For me, the way I see. That by the time you wait for the Treasury Memorandum, you are almost saying bye, and we are not ready not to account in time. And that's why we have chosen to take that way. That's why we have chosen even to interrogate the performance of budgets, so that even the sectors there, local governments, for me, whenever I go to attend a council meeting in my district, the question that comes from the councillors after my speech, when are you raising our remuneration? We passed a whole supplementary budget to raise the remunerations of local governments, councillors and whatnot, and up to now the money was not released. Then why did finance ask for a supplementary anyway, if you didn't know that you had anywhere to get money? So these are things we want now to avoid, so that we are not seen to be just playing around the stages and the microphones, but someone should take this blame, someone should be isolated for not doing their part or sleeping on their job. Actually, I want to inform you that there is an Auditor General's report that is coming on Parliament. The Parliament is being audited, and there is a report which has already come.
Is it the one which was
about to be released to the COSASE? And so we equally are going to be audited. If there is any wastefulness, any kind of diversions in the way Parliament uses its money, we are yet to see that. And we are ready for it.
One of the concerns specifically on that is that the Auditor General is an officer of Parliament.
Well,
now, there seems to be questions on conflict of interest.
The law now maybe will require a review, because the National Audit Act gives him the mandate to audit everywhere, including himself in Parliament. So maybe if it is a legislative scrutiny, it can be raised for amendment, something like that. But for now, the report is coming. And of course, we Parliament and everybody who oversees us are supposed to do a post-legislative scrutiny. When we pass a law, we expect now the consumers to start telling whether the law is working, the law is implementable, whether it is enforceable. There is that opportunity to do a post-legislative scrutiny, that an organization or an individual can seek to come and meet the Committee on Gender after making a post-legislative scrutiny on the NSSF Act, for instance. Isn't it going to 6 months?
Yeah, 6.
So how is it? Is it implementable? Is it enforceable? Give us a scrutiny and raise a brief or a position paper or an issues paper to find where we need to make reviews in the next way going forward. And so there is that area that is given to everyone. And of course, you have seen some of the laws that we pass in Parliament being taken to the Constitutional Court. One of them is the anti-gay bill. I was there. I supported it. I was in the House. And it was taken to court and we lost it. So I'm sure, I'm hearing that equally so, the computer misuse is in court. And so for us, we shall wait for judiciary to do their part on the law if they think that it was done in contravention to some of the standards and the frameworks of this country. This Parliament, the 11th Parliament, seems to be going a lot into the private members' bills. Why? Because we have realized that government people are sleeping on their jobs. And for us, we are not ready to be starved of work, for us to sit in Parliament and simply go on matters of national concern the whole day. No. We want work, we want business. And business that addresses the issues of the people. Right now in my committee, as I was telling you, we have already concluded the private members' bill on employment amendments bill. And the government is telling us they also have a bill that they are working on called employment amendments. Maybe it will come to amend this because they are late, according to me. Because for me, my report is on the order paper next week. Theirs, I don't know where it is. They are still telling us they are coming up with a bill. The sports bill, I think you saw there was a bit of tug of war. That government, since I was in the 9th Parliament, has been talking about a sports bill to date. They talk and never come. And so as Parliament, we have decided to be very radical, that if government cannot come, we have an opportunity for members to raise bills, and they are processed, and it's about the president. And of course, even the president has a limit, that he cannot return a bill unassented more than 2 times. It's only 2 times. And but if he returns, then the other article in 79 in the Constitution will apply. So we have those avenues.
The big challenge, Honorable,
yes,
that comes with private members' bills, they are not supposed to have a charge on the consolidated fund. And yet, when you're talking about addressing issues, challenges that people have, certainly there should be an element of providing funding, coming up with schemes and interventions for helping people, even when you talk about unemployment. So that is the big challenge, and I think there are certain bills where it is better that you push government to bring it, so that they bring it in that form with a charge on the consolidated fund, if you really want to solve the problem.
I think it is not law that the private members' bill should not charge the consolidated fund. I was the first seconder of the Children's Amendment Bill. I was in the 9th Parliament. And we had a scuffle with the ministry because after we had got a certificate of financial implication from the Ministry of Finance, the same ministry gave a certificate of financial implication to the government bill. And we were at a standstill. And the Right Honourable Olanya, the late, may he rest in peace, was in Parliament, and he expressed a lot of disconnect from the same finance ministry that gives 2 certificates to a similar bill. And good enough, the bill for government collapsed into the private members one. We now have a Children's Act amended 2015. Today, the same thing. In the 10th Parliament, a certificate of financial implication was given to the private member. And now the ministry is coming, they have a bill. Since the 10th Parliament, they have been telling people they have a bill. They have a bill. That Parliament collapsed. Up to today, they are coming with a bill, which we are not seeing. And so it's not law, it's not cast in stone that a private member's bill should not come because it should not charge the consolidated. If the Ministry of Finance scrutinizes the bill and finds that the financial implication does not affect the finances as much, they will give you the certificate. That is to show that the financial implication in the bill can be accommodated. And they will give it, they will allow it. And so we shouldn't even be scared that we are not going to be given a certificate of financial implication. There is law about it. If you take 60 days without giving us a certificate, the bill will come to Parliament.
It's assumed as though
you have given. Everything is just in the law. And so we cannot be intimidated by that. We shall continue to bring the private members' bills to cause government to get up on its feet, because they don't want to be committed to anything. And so for us to come up with private members' bills is to commit government to be responsible for the citizens of this country, because the very solid mandate and charge to the executive is to keep people and their property. And so for as long as you're not going to take that charge, we shall put you on your feet. Today we are saying, as when we are handling the labor externalization, we no longer need bilateral agreements. We want a legislation. And if government delays on that, the private member will come up with a labor migration legislation. And we shall go for that. Because the bilaterals don't work. They are not binding in as far as we have discovered. that bilaterals, enough of them. Now we need a policy that comes with the legislation, and we know how to deal in the market that has presented itself for labor. And of course, we should be mindful that there is a global recess. Yes, each government and each country has a way it has been affected in the whole arrangement. And this does not tell the government to continue to spend lavishly, even when we have this recess. This is a time for us to literally, and not saying of words, for us to tighten belts, starting from the household up to the government itself, that lavish expenditures need to be tackled. That one I would task my government to do. But equally so, at families, we need to tackle lavish expenditures. Up to now, we as members of parliament are still receiving wedding budgets of 30, 50 million. And this is a woman who has stayed with this man for 10 years. If the woman allowed you to just keep her for 10 years for free, now you are bringing a budget of 50 million to appease her on what? She already allowed you. You can only do a simple function. But the people don't seem to understand that. Up to now, you don't know how much we spent in graduations. But we are spending on a party of a graduate that has no job.
Who is not sure of the next
Who is
month.
not sure. But now we are here eating all the meat and all the presents and everything, when we would have just actually collected this money to this graduate. So that he gets a startup. And that is why I am a serious advocate of philanthropy for development. This is how developed countries work. That the government comes up with a flagship priority that affects the people. And everyone can contribute towards that flagship. The other day we were running for babies. For me, that was very good. Philanthropy for development. Ugandans are generous. That's what I have seen. That you just put a WhatsApp group for wedding, and everyone is throwing money on the WhatsApp group without seeing your face. People will be giving you money. But what if we collected some money for something in my district or in the government or in the country that really... That is why the recent loan we passed, there was no private member resentment, because it's a common good. Electricity is one of the drivers of development. It unlocks potential for development. And so even our friends in opposition did not find reason to bring a contra
Actually, thank you, Honorable. Talking about electricity, this week Parliament passed a loan worth $331.5 million. And that came along with a grant of $276.5 million from the International Development Association
of the World
Bank. And this specific loan, as Honorable mentions, it didn't have a minority report, contrary to what has been happening. And the minister mentioned that this money is intended to ensure that we have further spread of electricity and what have you, and actually envisage that it will shift from 19% currently to around 44%
Access to electricity.
And
there is a problem on those statistics, by the way, I will say it.
And so even as we give a bit of spotlight on this, I would want to understand and to our viewers how sustainable is the debt in line with the fiscal charter responsibility. And it's good also to mention that this specific loan, as we're passing the budget, had been captured in the budget as one of the avenues for government to get resources. Moses.
Yes, first of all, in the NDP 3 targets, I remember the target for our access to electricity. Government had the target of raising it to over 70%. But currently, there are contradictions from the same government, by the way. I have seen reports where government claims our access to electricity has now reached 51%. I have seen reports of government also indicating that our access to electricity is at 22%. But anyway, certainly our access to electricity is still very low. There could be a problem with the statistics from government, but it is still very low. And also the cost of electricity is still very high. Our power tariffs are very high. So they are among the highest actually in the world, and yet we even export electricity to the neighboring countries, which is a very big dilemma. Certainly, this loan is one of those loans that are friendly loans because it's a concessional loan. It's not a commercial loan. It has a grant element. So such loans, of course, are the desirable loans that we are supposed to be getting. Unfortunately, from the reports I have been seeing from the Ministry of Finance, such loans have been declining, and that is why government has been increasingly resorting to looking for commercial loans, which are very expensive. So this one, and I think that is why even the opposition did not object to it, because it is from World Bank. It's a concessional loan. We need it. Access to electricity is still very low. If you are to transform a society, the cottage industries she talked about, and all other necessary investments, if you are to come up with to transform a society, you certainly need electricity. And our access to electricity as a country is still very low. But talking about our public debt, you know, I have a Master of Business Administration, and my first degree I did economics. So this is an area where I am an expert. You know, the Minister of Finance for so long, I have been seeing Parliament on many occasions, members of Parliament concerned about the public debt. And the Minister of Finance kept convincing them our debt to GDP ratio is still below 50%. It has now reached 50%, by the way, going towards 53%.
Which report are you using?
Which report?
So because the current report, which was released by Ministry of Finance, puts it at 47%.
No,
but on the Bank of Uganda,
exactly.
Bank of Uganda puts at 54%.
Not 54%. I was there when Bank of Uganda was appearing before the Finance Committee 2 weeks ago. They said our public debt has reached 80 trillion, and they said our current GDP is 160 trillion. So that puts it at 50%. 50%. But of course, last week there are many loans that Parliament approved. Even this week there are many loans that have been approved. That figure keeps changing. Almost every month we are getting loans. But what I wanted to say is that the Minister of Finance has been hoodwinking Parliament. That because our debt to GDP ratio is still low, our debt is sustainable. And yet, debt sustainability, the best indicator is the liquidity indicator, the revenue generation. For us, our tax to GDP ratio as a country keeps oscillating between 11% and 13%, which is actually one of the lowest in the world, even below Africa's average of 16%. Now, what that means is that government has very limited capacity to generate enough revenue to pay back the debts. And that is where we have ended up where we are now. The current financial crisis that government is facing actually has nothing even to do with the global economic recession that is happening. Because in fact, as a matter of fact, URA is even meeting their, which is unprecedented. In the past, they have been failing to meet their tax collection targets. But currently, URA is meeting their,
and exceeded.
They are even getting a surplus. But the crisis has been created by the fact that government has been borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and now the cost of sustaining that debt has become so huge that the bulk of what URA is now collecting directly goes into paying those debts, paying interest and paying the debts. So what is left is very little for government to spend on salaries, to spend on government operational costs, to spend on different government programs. And that is why so many projects now have stalled. So many government programs have stalled because government does not have enough. If I were the president, by the way, in the current situation, I would reduce the size of cabinet. Our cabinet is one of the biggest in the world. Not necessary. You find one ministry has like 4 ministers. Each one of them has a convoy. A very big cost to the taxpayer, to a small country like ours with very limited resources. So government has to undertake radical measures of cutting unnecessary expenditures. Why would we be having a budget of the president state house with over 200 billions for donations? When you do not have enough money to even pay salaries. So government has parliament and the executive, they need to recall by the national budget. First of all, that budget, we are not cutting the quota according to our size. You cannot be planning to correct 25 trillion and you have a budget of 48 trillion. You cannot be earning let me say 2 million as your salary, but your expenditures are in the range of 5 millions. It doesn't make sense at all. And that is what has created the current crisis that we are having, that government has been over making commitments that are beyond its capacity, its revenue capacity. And that is why I am even surprised that Parliament has taken so long to compel the executive to have this discussion, because where we are right now, we are in a very big crisis. I told you about UNRWA. UNRWA was before the finance committee and they are saying they are stranded. Many of their projects have stalled because money has not been released for those projects to be continued, and the contractors are charging them interest, and the interest charged has now reached 800 billion, and it will keep escalating. So you can see how big the crisis is. Our debt, apart from maybe these concessional loans from IMF and World Bank, but these loans that we keep getting from Standard Chartered Bank, from commercial banks, from China, because most of the loans that we've been getting from China, commercial loans, government should halt getting those loans. And the other very big problem that we have as a country, many of these loans government has been securing over the years. They were securing the loans even before preparing the projects for which they were securing the loans. And I saw in the Auditor General's report that the money that government borrowed and it is yet to utilize is to the tune of 21 trillion. You can imagine, 21 trillion was borrowed. It is idle because the projects for which the money was borrowed were delayed. They were not ready for implementation. And so we continue paying commitment charges and interest on those loans that are idle. And that it tells you how big the problem is. And Parliament that has a mandate of carrying out to oversight over the executive, these are areas where we actually even need a special session of Parliament specifically to discuss this issue, because it's a very serious issue. I remember seeing a World Bank report that indicated that even it was assessing the loans we've been getting over the years. You see, the president was overemphasizing infrastructure development. But even for the loans that we are specifically getting into that sector of infrastructure development, of construction of roads, we didn't get enough value because a big portion of that money was stolen. It was even confirmed by you remember the UNRWA probe by Catherine Bamugemerire that investigated and carried and established that out of about 9 trillion that had been allocated in a period of about 4 years or 5 years to that sector, to UNRWA, out of 9 trillion, 4 trillion had been stolen. This is in a government report. Government instituted a probe by Catherine Bamugemerire, and in her report she concluded that 4 trillion that was sent to that sector for construction of roads was stolen. And the way it was stolen is that government officials in that sector connived with the contractors and they were inflating the costs. And that is why you see most of these roads that have been done after 2-3 years, you see potholes. The Kalea is very small, shoulder work is done. That's where we are.
Taken. And I think you raised quite a number of issues. Honorable, you may want to...
Yeah, I want to appreciate Moses's issues and the scrutiny he's giving to the issue of loans. I share his sentiments that actually, in as far as loans are concerned, the loans would not be the problem. The use of loans should take more of our discussions. What are the loans being used for? And to even understand that I think as a country, as a people of Uganda, I think there is a problem with us and loans. And that is why recently you saw the Right Honorable Prime Minister bailing out some woman who decided to take a loan that was beyond her means to pay back. And then she fell into a problem. How many more of her nature are getting such problems? The teachers, I am a teacher myself, in a report by EPRC, have been found to be the biggest consumers of loans. And not only loans, but multiple loans. Using the same salary of 600,000 per month, you have a loan in Stanbic, you have a loan in Centenary, you have a loan in microfinance, you have a loan in Kafuna, you have a loan everywhere, until you have nothing. And then we continue to cry. So I think even we, the members of parliament, are not spared on this. I think Observer has now told us that we are broke. And that is why we are hiding. and I don't want to dispute it. Because equally so, immediately we come to parliament, every bank is around us. They want you to take a loan equivalent to the salary you will get for the 5 years. And I think that is very unrealistic. America got into that problem, where almost every American had mortgaged their property into loans, until the government of America took a very drastic position to protect their people from the mortgages they had put for loans. And then all the microfinance businesses ran to Uganda. After being chased away from America, they now all are here. I have personally chased microfinance people around my older persons. Even for the 25,000, the microfinancers are around them. You know, we can give you this money. You know that 25,000 can be paid, can be used to pay. And they want to plunge the older persons into the loan business. And so, as individuals, let's speak to ourselves about the thing called loans. Because it is in our fabric, it seems, in our DNA. And therefore, being that even the people who are supposed to plan for this country, people who are supposed to run the Ministry of Finance and advise His Excellency, who may not necessarily be technical enough, on how we should spend and how we should use our incomes, I'm sure they are also caught up in the DNA of taking loans. And they think you dig one pit to cover another pit, which is very, very unfortunate. And therefore, we're going forward, if we had such a discussion as to speak about loans and how we use them and how we can make them benefit or return on investment, let us reconsider on the size of parliament. I'm a member of parliament myself, and I'm sure I'm speaking against myself. Let us reconsider the size of parliament. If we have to get value for money, that's what I'm talking about, value for money. If you're going to tell us we need only 100 members in the House per day, I think that's a mess. Every member of parliament was elected to come and represent their people every time. And so you cannot structure us. And the moment you take to structuring us, you are speaking to the planning that it seems, I think, we need to replan. That maybe 100 members would be enough. To even pass a loan, to even pass laws, to even do everything. So we may have to reconsider the size of the parliament. We need to reconsider on administrative units. Up to now, we have new administrative units which have lived for 3 to 5 years without getting a single coin from the central bank. They have no staff. They have no headquarters. It is a briefcase. It is only the chairman LC3 and a shared sub-county chief. Shared between sub-counties. Shared parish chiefs. And so we need to reconsider. I'm sure we are going into 2024-25, And members will all be up for new administrative units. But I think we need to speak truth to the matters. We need to reconsider the executive. Do we think that there is a value by having very many? My sector is the highly prescribed, is subscribed with ministers, 6 ministers in one sector. But you will find that at 1 week, all of them are out of country. No minister has stayed. All of them out. And then we say, oh, so the ministry can run even without a single minister for a whole week, for 2 weeks. So these reconsiderations, they are painful, but we may have to take them if we really mean anything for our people. The RDCs, we need to rethink. Do we still need another DC and deputy? Or one RDC possibly could work? We need to rethink this. NIRA has only 112 offices in 143 districts, without talking about the cities. Arua is running 5 districts. One office of NIRA running 5 districts in Arua, in the bigger Arua. How do you expect a value for money there? 4 staff running 5 districts, giving identity cards. So these are things we need to speak to the truth about. Micromanaging is the most terrible thing that has attacked all of us. For us, in our constituencies, we are the government now. Every road that gets bad, the WhatsApp starts. Where are they? Where are they? Now they are busy eating sausage in Kampala. They should come and do this road. They should come and build this church. They should come and build this health center. They should come and construct the classrooms, even at UPPA schools. So the micromanaging needs to be addressed, because it opens up for fraud, it opens up for corruption. Because if I'm the one who is going to work on a UNRA road, did UNRA plan to address this road? Did the Minister of Education plan that they needed desks in their classrooms, that they needed staff quarters? And then when an MP is made to do all this, and then we hear in some district, the cow is in jail, the DHO is in jail, the planner is in jail, the finance office is in jail. For 12 years, they have been receiving money for 32 ghost health centers. And for me in kyegegwa, I only need 9 more health centers. But some big district has for 12 years been receiving money for 32 ghosts. Can you imagine? So these are things we should speak truth to. And also, of course, our priorities. Do you think we needed parish development model now, after we have not tested a myoga yet? Did we need to rush to give money before we could maybe do mindset change, then information systems, and then money? But some technical person told me when I asked such a question, he said, you know, money is politically sexy. So when you splash around, everyone comes around you. Is that the way we run government, with politically sexy things? Or we want to see a transformation in our people? And so I wouldn't be very shy to involve in such a discussion where we speak truth to the matter and try to adjust on every lavish expenditures that we make. My driver is just out there, but sometimes I get out of my car and get on a border because I must be on time. My meeting starts at 10 and I cannot afford to tell people that I was in a jam. I just get on a motorcycle and to Parliament because I must conduct that meeting. Whenever he comes, you will find me there. I sometimes get on a bus because I have even discovered, do I need to drive this car to kyegegwa and back? And that fuel is 500,000. I can have my chidabo cabin in kyegegwa. Moreover, even picked from auctions, not necessarily new. I get on a link bus at 50,000 and I'm in kyegegwa, and I go into my chidabo cabin, do my work, enter the bus, come back. Do I need to spend that? So these are reconsiderations that even at a status where you think you are, You may have to take options that work. You may have at household level to take options that will work for the time in which we live, so that we don't continue to be lavish as individuals, lavish as sectors and agencies, lavish as a government.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable. We've come to an end to this discussion, but I must say that it's been a very, very interesting conversation. You've expounded and contributed largely on this, and I'm sure that our viewers, wherever they are watching us from, can appreciate. And our viewers, thank you so much. To keep this conversation going, please drop a comment and let's have this conversation going on. I want to sincerely thank so much my panel. Honorable, thank you so much for sparing your time and for sharing with us the knowledge and your expertise in this area.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Moses, for always accepting to offer us time as and when we call you.
Thank you also for moderating and giving us the opportunity to be on this platform and share our ideas.
I am delighted that it's my first time here.
So thank you so much.
But I want to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable. I think when we invite you when you have time, you can always come back. Thank you so much to our viewers. We've come to an end of this session, and we do appreciate for your time and wish to see you next time, same place, same time. Thank you.
Bye.